All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are here, of course, with Kimberly Brock and Susanna Kearsley. Or I should say, I should introduce myself. My name is Danielle Dresser. I'm the events coordinator at Anderson's, and on behalf of everyone at Anderson's Bookshop, we want to thank you for spending some time with us tonight. Anderson's Bookshop is a sixth generation run family business just shy of 150 years. We're also completely woman owned, all things we were very proud of. Events like this, both virtual and in person, are a big part of our business, and we are so grateful when book lovers get to connect with authors. So a few housekeeping items. This conversation is being recorded. Also, at the end of this talk, if you have any questions, please submit them, or for our authors, please submit them there's a Q&A button along the bottom of your screen, or you can put them in the chat. I will be monitoring both. Additionally, I'm going to share some links in the chat once we get started. So it'll be the book links on andersons.com for both Kimberly and for Susanna, as well as a link to sign up for our newsletter, our events calendar, and our social media. These are the best ways to find out about what we have going on. And we've got a lot of great stuff going in the coming months or weeks and months. Again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Kimberly Brock and Susanna Kearsley.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm the interviewer tonight, so I have notes.
I'm here to take a test.
Yeah. I would like to begin, as I always do, by acknowledging the people of the Anishinaabe lands nations on whose lands I live, by grace of treaties that often broken, very imperfect treaties, but paying my respects to their elders, past and present, and extending that same respect to any Indigenous people who may be with us tonight. I'd also like to get my thank yous out of the way, or I'm going to get really chatty and I'm going to forget all my thank yous. So thank you very, very much to Anderson's Bookshops for hosting us this evening and for being such amazing champions of all writers and readers. To Harper Muse, Kim's publishers, and to Sourcebooks, my publishers, for helping make this evening possible. And I want to thank all of you for coming out to spend this evening with us. We are so happy to have you with us. Kimberly, for people that aren't aware of Kimberly, Kimberly and I met, it would be back in, was it 2013?
I think
it has to be like 10 years, almost 10 years ago.
2014?
2013. It was
really?
It was
wow.
It was a while back. It was, I think it was 2013 when I was down at Foxtail Bookshop in Woodstock, Georgia. And she had, The River Witch was just out, Kimberly's debut novel. And we just hit it off. It was one of those people that you just, those people that you meet and you just feel like you've known them for your whole life, and they're just very easy to talk to. And so I have kept in touch with Kimberly over the years, and when her second novel came out, she asked if I wanted to read it. I'm like, yes, please. And of course, I was in the middle of editing my latest novel, and I wasn't able to get it read in time to give her a blurb. Otherwise, I would have given her a glowing blurb for it. It's a beautiful, beautiful novel, The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare. But I said, when it comes out, can I please do an event with you? Because I would like to let everybody know about this book. So she said, yes, I can. And here we are tonight. This is the result. So Kimberly is a very elegant writer. A lot of Southern books have this, I don't want to call it like a, magic realism quality to it, but it's a magical quality to it. Like when you sink into the story, you just feel like getting under a blanket with a big pot of tea and spending the entire day there in this world that is being woven around you like a blanket. And Kimberly has that gift of storytelling that I think is just woven into the genes. And I think it probably comes from the fact that a lot of Southern writers can trace their family trees back to Scotland and Ireland and the, the old countries where the storytelling is in the blood, and
Yes.
you know, she's very much got that genetically there. So I'm not going to spoil a lot of the story because I'm going to let her tell you a lot of the story as we talk. But it does involve the lost settlement of Roanoke. It involves a dual time element, a little, which is on my catnip, and a lot of family, little threads of romance, you know, mother-daughter stuff and multi-generational stuff, which is something else I really love. But I'm going to take us back to the beginning of your writerliness. Because I think it's a really good thing for people out there. I think some of the people joining us probably write as well. Whether you're published or not, you're still a writer. And I think it's a good thing for people to know that there is no single path to becoming a writer. You have been an actor, you have been an educator. So tell us how you got from there to here. What was your path to publication?
Okay. First of all, thank you for all of that. And thank you for doing all of the thank yous, because I will forget people left and right. I'm so tired being on this book tour since Wednesday. Writer's path. I think people always say, did you know you were a writer? Always know you were a writer. I think what you said was interesting. I've always known I was a storyteller. Mm-hmm. There were always stories being told in my family. My mother was a reader. My dad loved history. And so it was all stories all the time. And I think the first time I knew I wanted to be a storyteller was the first day I went into the library in the town where I lived. I was probably 5 or 6. And I was that kid that was always in trouble in school. My report cards would come home and say, talks too much, won't stay in her seat, right? And I walked into the library and I remember looking around at all of the books and thinking, this is how you do it. You can talk forever if you just keep writing books. And so I think I knew I would like to do that when I was young. But then as I grew up, it seemed impossible. Impractical, all of the things. And my dad would say, how are you going to get insurance? and that was always in the back of my head. And so I loved to dance, and I thought I was going to teach ballet. And then I was diagnosed with scoliosis. I have very severe scoliosis, and I had a spinal fusion when I was 16. And that was kind of the end of dancing. And so that was a form of expression. That was a way of telling stories. Music has always been the lyricism of it. And that was a storytelling element in my life as well. But I had to change, and that's when I wound up in theater in high school. More stories, telling stories. I went to college on a theater scholarship, and I ended up directing a children's play. And when I did that, I decided to go into elementary education, something I said I would never do, but I loved it. And I ended up teaching kids who had behavior disorders and neurological disorders. But the school I was at was next door to a children's theater. So I did the first play with them, more storytelling. And after I had my children and I was at home, I had 2 kids 16 months apart. And I was far from home. And I was homesick. And I picked up a book that a woman from North Georgia had written. It was a fiction, and it made me worse homesick. But the internet was new, and her email address was on the back. And I thought, I'll just send her a little note and tell her I like this because it reminds me of home. And she answered me back, and we started a conversation. And at some point she said, you're kind of funny. Have you ever thought about writing a short story? And I said, no, not really. Now, I had written a lot of things over the years growing up, all of your little language arts fairs and really bad teenage poetry and all of those things. But to write, to be published, didn't even seem like a reality. But I had nothing else to do. I had babies who were napping. So I wrote a short story, and that's where it started. I published that short story and then wrote a really terrible novel that I put under my bed that was like 1,000. I mean, I can't even remember how long that book was. It went on and on and on. And then I wrote River Witch and had another child, and life happens. So there was a good amount of time when I really was just thinking about this second book a long time before I ever sat down to write another one. And I know it seems strange, I think, because so many authors are, cranking out books. You crank out books so fast. I write really slow. It takes me a long time to process. I went through several different literary agents. So long story short, a whole different kind of path, I think. And
yeah. Well, I'm a super slow writer. Like a good day for me is like, if I go 100 words, like that's fantastic.
I'm the same way.
And it takes me anywhere from like a year is a super fast book. That's I've done 2 books in my life that took me a year, right? And the rest are anywhere between usually 2 and 3 years and up, right? So
that seems about right to me. I think from start to finish seriously writing this book was probably 3 years.
Yeah, which is that's a good length of time. And everybody has their own pace. And I have friends that like there's no particular everybody has their own speed. There's no virtue in writing fast. There's no virtue in writing slow. I have friends that write beautiful books very quickly, and they're beautiful books, but I can't do it. I can't write what I write doesn't come quickly, and I don't
either.
I don't actually do anything quickly. I am just very, very, I'm very sloth-like in most things, I eat quickly. That's about it. I can glom through chocolate faster than just about anybody, but that's, that I can't do much else quickly, down a martini, but that's, everything else is very, very measured and slow. So there's nothing, like that's a good pace. 3 years. I mean, Kate Morton takes 3 years to get a book out. You just have to kind of build.
I'm so like Kate Morton. Thank you.
Yeah. So just, just be gentle with yourself and realize that, your pace is going to be your pace. And
I take a long time. I'm like a crock pot, I think a lot more than I actually write. It has to sit in the pot for a long time before I know what it is that I'm saying. And sometimes not until I'm finished completely with the draft. So
do you know what it is you were setting out to say? I know. Yeah. Sometimes a character will say something I'm like, oh, so that's the theme. That's the whole theme.
Finally, there it is.
There it is.
Such a weird subconscious game you play with yourself in your head. And I always get to the end and I think, well, if I had known what that was about, this would have been so much easier.
So you're not a plotter then, you're a pantser, or are you a plotzer? Are you a bit of both?
I'm a plotzer.
Okay.
I'm a plotzer, and I usually weirdly know the end to some degree.
Yeah, I usually do too. That's my carrot. I always look at it. I think that's my subconscious holding out this carrot saying, look, you can do it. You can have this if you get all the way to the end. This is really good, but
I know, right?
You have to stay there and not go to this because I don't know if you get this too, but what happens with me is I get the shiny, like I call it the sparkly. Remember from I think it's from The Secret of Nim. The sparkly,
it is.
Right?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Ooh, it's a sparkly, and it's always you get midway through the book and then there's a sparkly over here, and then it's kind of like, if I stop this book, I can have this sparkly book that's over here. I could do the sparkly. And the carrot of the ending that is just so perfect is like, no, I want to write that ending. I want to get here, so I have to plow through the book to, but the sparkly is very, very, very,
and it's always the worst time when you find it.
Yeah.
It always is. And I need to know the end to write the beginning too. And I'll go, sometimes I write a lot that I throw out before I ever find the beginning. But usually if I know the end, I have an idea of where it's going to be. And if I don't know the end, I don't know where to start.
That makes sense.
Do that?
Yep. I'm throwing out beginnings now. So I totally see, we're just sisters separated at birth. So the hardest question for most writers to answer is, where do you get your ideas? Which some writers very rudely kind of, fluff off and say, oh, that's a terrible question. It's not a terrible question. It's a very good question. It's just, it's impossible to answer in a general sense, because every single book has a different starting place.
Yeah.
And so you can't just say, where do you get your ideas in general? Because every book has its own start. So for the Lost Book of Eleanor Dare, what was its beginning? Where were you? What were you doing when that little seed first snagged on your sleeve? What were you doing?
I said before, I have 3 kids now, but at the time we were living in North Carolina. I'm from North Georgia, and they were little and taking naps. And I think maybe I'd already started writing River Witch. I think what I was doing was research for River Witch, because there are historical elements in that from Appalachia, and I was just digging around on the internet for ideas for that book and kind of what I was trying to do in it. And I ran across this article, and it was about something called the Dare Stones. And I had never heard anything about them, but they were located at a college. It's called Brenau University now. That is in Gainesville, Georgia, which would have been about an hour from where I grew up, and actually about an hour from where I live now. And I had never heard anything about them. And anything that I feel like, oh, I really should know that. How do I not know that? The how do I not know that question is what always leads me down a rabbit hole. Always. Because I want to know, why not? Who decided that's something I'm not supposed to know about, and why did they hide it? Because to me, this was an obvious one. This man in 1937 tripped over a rock out on a highway near Edenton, North Carolina, about 50 miles inland along the Chowan River, and it had inscription on it. And he was on vacation with his wife. This is his story anyway. And he looked at it and couldn't read it, but this was right at the end of the Depression, and kind of the time of Barnum, and lots of fake effigies were being made, and lots of hoaxes and spectacles in the country. And he thought, well, maybe it'll be worth something, so he threw it in his trunk. And they went on their way, and they went on their way down to Atlanta, where Emory College is located. And he took the stone in to Emory, and he said, what do you think? And they all lost their minds, because they looked at it. Lots of people from around the country looked at it. Everybody smarter than me said, this is Elizabethan English. This solves the lost colony of Roanoke, America's oldest history. It had the initials EWD, and it was a message supposedly from Eleanor White Dare, the daughter of the governor of the lost colony of Roanoke. And it said, there's been a massacre. Everybody's been killed. My husband, my daughter, Virginia Dare, who most people know, she had survived along with a few others. And it kind of gave the idea that there was a tombstone nearby somewhere, and that they were moving on from there. And hope you find me, Dad, right? The stone was taken to Brunel University by one of the professors at Emory, who was the son of the president of Brunel. And they said, if you find any more of these, we'll pay you. And so every moonshiner and crackpot, all these stones showed up all of a sudden. And to begin with, the whole country was just wild about it. We thought it was all real and everybody was excited. And then this fella from the Saturday Evening Post did a little digging and found a mason who they believe was in on it and was making all of these other stones. So it was all debunked in the Saturday Evening Post, and the stones were put away at Brunel. In fact, they were stored, there were tons of them. So what are you going to do? They put them underneath the stage at the school. But the first stone, nobody has ever been able to authenticate or prove that it's not authentic. And that's what did it for me. I could not stop thinking about that, because I felt like, what if it was real? What if it was, and it was her story, and I wanted to know. So I went to see it. You can make an appointment and go see it at Brunel. And what I did not expect was that I was very emotional. It made me cry. And I realized when I was standing there that I did not care if it was true. I just loved that it existed because I was remembering her. Somebody was remembering her, and it was part of her story now. It meant her story had continued somehow. I was thinking about her, this young woman, this young mother, just like she would have been. And I thought, if I'd been Eleanor Dare, she was only 19 and standing there in the new world with a new husband and a new baby that had been killed. Her father had left the colony to go back for supplies. I don't think I would have thought, wow, we're really going to make it. This is going to go well. I just would have wanted to be remembered. And so I spent a lot of years trying to figure out how to do that, how to write a story that would matter somehow for her.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's usually how, like, I call those my moments. I didn't know that. I get that. That's where a lot of my books start too.
Yeah. I wonder why.
And they stick, and those things stick with you, and you just can't shake them out of your head until they demand that you write them. It's those little voices that demand that you write them.
Absolutely. And I it was a book that I wasn't really sure that I never feel like while I'm writing for both of these books that I'm smart enough to write the book. I'm not. And I'm not smart enough until I get to the end. And then you find that it teaches you how to write it as you're writing it. And so I fought it for a long time. I wanted to write it, but I was very intimidated by it.
I think if you ever feel that you're totally ready to write the story that is being given to you, then you probably shouldn't write it. I think you should always frighten yourself, scare yourself with the story that you're taking on. And that's been my mantra. Just always find something that scares you, where you sit there and say, I am not ready to write this book, and just do it, just do it. And
I think
it was
you get bored too.
Yeah.
If you're not challenged.
Earl Stanley Gardner, the Perry Mason writer, said that, whenever you find something that frightens you like that, that you should just wade right out there and meet it, and just don't let it drift by in the river. Just wade right out there and meet it. And I've always tried to kind of take his advice.
Yeah.
I curse him in the middle of the book all the time. It's like, I told you I wasn't ready to write this book. I told you I didn't have the skills. I just, it's did you know it was going to be dual timeline from the beginning? Did you know that was the way you wanted to do it, or was it just kind of work its way out?
Well, that's what took me so long, because I kept trying to write it from Eleanor's point of view.
Right.
And I love writing first person.
Yep.
And I just I couldn't shake the whole, it was dry. It felt like pilgrims, and I could not connect with the real 3D people. And I got very frustrated with it. And I quit. I put it away for a while and, messed around with other things. But I just kept aggravating me. And I realized that if I started instead of with her, but really what happened is I realized that my question was, I knew when Eleanor supposedly carved that stone.
Mm-hmm.
I knew when it had been found. Where had it been and what had it meant to anybody in the interim? Had it always just been on the side of that road, laying there waiting for somebody to trip over it? Or was there more to its story and who it was connected to? And so I thought about who her daughter and her daughter's descendants might have been, not Virginia, but a second child that's mentioned in those later stones. And I fictionalized 15, 16 generations. Numbers are bad. Don't write a historical novel. It's a bad idea. But I fictionalized all of these descendants and brought them down to when those stones had already been dismissed. And what do you make of that? If it's your family lore, what do you believe about it? Does it matter if it's true or not? And so that's where I started with the story. And once I did that, then I had something. But I didn't write Eleanor's story for a long time. I'll tell you about that.
Well, tell me about that, because just tell me. What brought her to life? What?
I had turned in the whole manuscript set in 1945 with Alice Young and her daughter Penn right at the end of the war. They don't know it's the end of the war because they're living through it. Right. But she's a widow, and Penn is asking her the same thing that all little girls ask their moms. Who are you? And who does that make me? And they're trying to sort of figure out what the world is gonna look like now. I think home front stories are not as prevalent in fiction for the end of World War II. And I was interested in that. So I had written the whole thing, this mother-daughter story, and they're descendants of Eleanor's, and trying to figure out what to make of that. They have a commonplace book that belonged to all of the women in the matriarchal line, down from Eleanor and before her mother. And it has a story at the middle of it about Eleanor. My agent read it and said, "This is great. Now where's the rest of it?" I said, "It's a big book. Is that not enough?" And she said, "Nope. And it's all in your head. I know you know it all. And none of it is here. Why haven't you written about Eleanor? You just allude to her and you allude to these women. Where is it?" And I said, "I just can't give myself permission to write her story. I don't know what happened to her. Nobody knows what happened to her. That feels wrong. It's like stomping through a cemetery." And I couldn't do it. I was really adamant. It took her about 6 weeks to talk me into it. And I woke up at 2 a.m. and I could hear it. And people think you're crazy when you say,
"Oh yeah, yeah, they do."
But I could hear it, and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I thought, who is that? Who is telling this story? Because that's the difference. It was a story. And I realized if the way this story would have been passed would have been from mother to daughter, like an oral history, so like a game of telephone, it might not all be true. And I think that's how we pass women's history, from mother to daughter. And we don't always get the whole truth, right? Yep. We get a version of the truth. We get what our mothers believe that we need to hear at the time. And so Eleanor's tale is starts in the center of the book when Penn discovers it, and it's a fable. It's not really a traditional dual timeline. And once I did that, once I knew the purpose of Eleanor's tale, then I could write it.
Well, and then you know the structure of it. Then you know then you know the medium by which it comes into the story. Yeah. No, it was very cleverly done. It was very cleverly done.
Thank you.
I really liked it. Eleanor, so you're talking about family, which leads me into my next question, which is like in Eleanor Dare, you've got a lot to say about family, which is and not just the family that you're born into, but your found family, the family that you create for yourself. Is that something you did consciously? Is that something that comes out of a place in your own life, or is that something that just worked its own way into the story?
I think both. How could it not be? I think everybody understands that. Everybody has that experience. And if they don't, I think they long for it. I think people, and the other thing is, I think in the last 10 years, really, I've just seen people become more and more lonely in my country. And this is kind of an origin story in a way, I guess. And I felt like they would have been facing the same thing, trying to put together who they are, what they believe about the people around them in their community, whether they are family or friends, and how do we all sit down at a table together again. And Eleanor would have been facing that too at that time. I mean, her story is a story about colonization is not pretty, right? And I don't know if you know this, but we weren't the first ones here. And so I wanted that to kind of come forward in the 1945 aspect of who we had here, the POW camps that were here, where our boys were overseas, and what was happening. How were we finding our humanity and seeing one another as friends and family again. So that's what I was.
That's really good. So see, and community is like a running theme through all your stuff anyway. The whole sense of community. I mean, you're part of Tall Poppy Writers. You founded the Tinderbox Writer Retreat. Community is a huge part of who you are. You know, what do you get from that yourself? I mean, like how important is community to you? Like what do you personally pull from that for yourself, for your own well-being?
I think it's complicated. I am kind of a loner, like by nature. I could be at home by myself forever and probably be content with that. But I don't like when other people are lonely.
Yeah.
And so I end up being somebody who connects other people a lot.
You create community for other people. Yeah, that's what I was like. That's what I was. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then it helps me in the end, you know. I'm the one I think that gets the most out of it. It's sort of backward, but I think that's what it is. I'm the same way about, you know, I won't fight my own battles, but I'll fight somebody else's. And it's kind of the same thing. I like to see people nurtured and creative and happy. And I selfishly, I really enjoy what comes out of those communities, the creative. I'm especially Tinderbox has been amazing. What I have seen women create. There were cookbooks and quilts and.
Well, tell people a little bit about Tinderbox for people that haven't been on your website, don't know anything about Tinderbox. Just tell people a little bit about Tinderbox.
I haven't been able to hold a retreat the last few years, and I miss it. And I hope we can kind of reimagine that somehow and do that. It did give me time to finish this book. So, you know, there is something to be said for going back in your hidey hole and doing your work.
Yep.
But Tinderbox is something that I started in the middle of writing this book early on because I wasn't writing. I was stuck. And in my personal life, I was not able to finish the thought. I think we process everything in story.
Yep.
So if you can't get to the conclusion, then
Yep.
you just go around and around. And I was going around and around. And I was doing that creatively as well. And it was funny. I just kept hearing women around me when I'd be in the grocery store or at church or wherever I happened to be. It seemed like all I heard was women having conversations about how they weren't creative or they had lost their creativity. And I thought, man, we're all miserable. That's just a sad way to be. And I don't know how to do a whole lot, but I could sit down in a room, I could make a space, and we could tell stories. And out of that, and my background with kids with challenges, and so I had to be really creative, and I did a lot of reading about brain science and art and the use of your hands. We did a lot of really creative, strange, fun activities and wrote and cried and shared. And women would come in and you're all scared of each other and you don't want to talk and you don't want to share and you feel silly. And then 8 weeks into it, we know everything about each other and we've made stuff. And so it went from being something local to being a retreat that I hosted twice a year. And it was great. It was great. But
will be again.
I got the most out of it. It was awesome.
It will be again. I'm going to wrap up our segment of it by asking. This is something I love asking my fellow writers. This is it. Joel Edgerton, the actor, is one of my favorite actors. So I was watching an interview with him on George Stroumboulopoulos, which is a Canadian interviewer up here. And Joel is also a writer and director of his own films as well. So he had just finished a film that he had written, and he made the comment. George was asking him, why he always wrote the same kind of characters or ended up acting the same kind of characters that made bad decisions and had to work their way out of them. And he responded with this brilliant thing, which was a lot of writers keep visiting the same material. It's like they're trying to answer or work out the same problem. And a lot of them won't even know it until someone reflects it to them. So if I were to hit you with it, what problem do you think you're trying to work out or find the answer to in your own writing?
Survivor's guilt.
Survivor's guilt.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Always. And where does that come from?
I am a surviving twin. We were premature by 9 weeks, and she died the day after we were born. And I've always known about her. My parents were always very open about it, but there is a sense of one foot in one world, one in the other. There's a sense of I'm the ghost. They're watching her grow up through my life, watching me. And I don't necessarily think that I walk around feeling guilty all the time, but I contemplate it a lot. Right. And especially as I'm getting older, I'm 50 this year. And so when I was writing this book, I became more aware of it, like I said before, as I finished the book, that each character is me at a certain time in my life. I'm writing to that 13-year-old me. I'm writing to that young mother. I'm writing to the woman I hope I'll be when I'm older, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And how I have worked through that idea of surviving, and we're all doing that. We're all surviving somebody or something. Right. And how do we process that? How do you move forward from that? And what do you make of it? So I think that will always be the thing at the heart of it, whether I want it to be or not.
Well, that's really cool, because everybody, mine is, where do you belong, right? Because of my life, because of always moving around. So where do you fit? Where do you belong? And I never thought about it until I watched that interview, and I'm like, interesting. And one of my other writing friends said, well, that's your thing. That's, she was the one that pointed it out. And I said,
right.
you're right. You're absolutely right. Because I had never looked at all my books and seen something common to them. And she was like, well, in every single one of your books,
everybody's trying to find home.
they're all trying to figure out where you belong. And I was like, oh, well, I know exactly where that comes from then.
Yeah.
But it's
for sure.
And I'm sure every writer has it. And until I heard him say that, I never thought about that. And I don't think you can escape it. I think we're all, like you say, we process.
It is.
We process our life through story, and every writer is doing it. We're not always conscious of.
I know. I thought about this one too, that there's loss. You don't have answers for loss.
Right.
And so I think that survivor's guilt shows up in this story, in that I'm trying to learn to be okay with that, with not having the answers. And I have the mother and the daughter talking about loving the mystery most of all, instead of trying to solve what happened to Eleanor. Just love Eleanor, be okay with whatever it was, and love whatever's coming next. So it's funny how those little things creep in, and your subconscious just has a party and you don't even know it until you're finished. You sit back and think, well, crap, there's all my stuff right there in front of everybody. But it's kind of fun too.
But it helps you though. I mean, it's a healing and cathartic thing. Yeah. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. Whatever you're working out on the page, you're doing it beautifully. And
thank you very much.
And we are definitely benefiting from it. I read a Goodreads review where the Goodreads reviewer had said that, among other things, readers will perhaps learn to see the magic in every part of their life. And I thought that is just such a lovely way to say it. And
it's beautiful.
It's, so you'd be proud of this. You'd be proud of this. So are you ready to climb the silo again? What's next? What's up? What are you doing? What are you doing next?
I have the stew in the crock pot.
Okay.
And I'm close. I'm starting to, dabble. I've written some. It's not anything I've let anybody read yet, but do you talk about what you're writing
to my mom? I have a theory that I don't know if it's accurate or not. I have a theory that every writer has a sounding board person.
Yep.
That that we all call, and then the other person sits on the other end of the phone and goes,
I know.
And just like probably watches something else on TV while we're doing it, and then just
because they know it's going to change next week. I know.
Dies a little inside whenever we call. But for me, that's my mom, right? And and she's my first reader, and she's the one that I just sort of watch like this when she's reading the pages, and so that's my sounding board person. So I talk stuff over with her. It's like, this is what I think is going to happen. This is what I think is going to happen. But in the early stages, I don't go into like big detail with everybody else because it's going to change. Yeah, it's going to
change, and I get lost in it a little bit too if I talk too much about it. Yeah. But I know it is a ghost story about ghost stories.
Cool.
So
I'm all in. 3 years from now, I will be there to read it.
Yeah.
So we have hopefully a couple of questions from the audience.
We do. Yeah. Thank you. That was fascinating. I was riveted the entire time. You guys were talking about some really interesting stuff. So I'm sure everyone at home also enjoyed it just as much. Our first question is, and I think both of you could probably answer this, but it's who was the toughest character to write and why?
No, I'm going to let Kimberly answer this. This is Kimberly's evening.
Yeah.
It is always my main character. Mm-hmm. Always my main character is the hardest for me to write. And it makes me so angry. I'll be in the middle of the book and I'll be thinking, these secondary characters are a lot more fun and so easy to write. Why aren't you the main character? And I'll think about switching it up and just avoiding because the main character is the work. Because for me, the main character is me always. And that doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman or a child because it's what I'm trying to get at and what I'm trying to say in the book. And I don't know what that is entirely until I'm finished. And my main characters are never incredibly likable. And they're
Oh,
usually
I
kind
thought
of,
Alice was really like, I mean, she
did
had
you like her?
layer. Of course I did.
They're always a little bit difficult and grumpy a lot. and they seem whiny to me
Yeah,
sometimes.
she needed a hug. She wasn't
And I just
whiny. She
wanna,
just needed a hug.
and it's because I want them to be the person they're going to be at the end of the book.
Yeah.
And they're not that person yet. And so it's almost like having a kid that you're really frustrated with, trying to get them to behave through the whole thing. So always my main character. My first novel, Rosalind, made me nuts the whole time. I didn't like her till the very end. And I remember thinking, nobody's going to like you. And same with Alice a little bit. I liked Alice better.
Yeah, no, Alice needed a hug and a sniff shot of bourbon. She just needed, you know, she was a mom, she was a widow, she was, you know, she had people pecking at her, like nibbling her to death like ducks. I mean, she just needed like a, you know, she was likable.
Well, good. I'm glad you liked her. I think Alice was a lot like the peacocks in the book, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe her mother was too. But yeah, that main character is always the one.
Yeah. Okay. And then our second question is, your book is relatively long. Was it difficult to sell as a result?
I will be really honest with you. I turned in a shorter book to my agent and she said, "Where's the rest?" I turned in a shorter book to my editor and she said, "Where's the rest?" So don't blame me. It would have been a little shorter. I was really nervous, and I still am a little nervous because, I mean, it's like barbecue. It's slow and low. It's very Southern, and it's not what you're going to find, you know, with suspense is so popular, and the typical dual timeline set in World War II where you have the spy female and it's all go get them. And I love those books. That's just not what this was. And it was not tricky to sell because it was too long. It was tricky to sell to get it in the right order, to put it together. It was like a puzzle, putting it together.
Just write what you write and don't worry about whether it pleases. Like, you're never going to please everybody.
You need to sit right here.
You know, but you know what? That's the thing, is like, I don't write super fast paced stuff.
No, you don't. That's why I love your books.
And I mean, Maeve Binchy didn't write super fast paced stuff. And, you know, Sense and Sensibility is not a super fast paced movie. It's what I used to use to put my kids to sleep when they would, my firstborn would stay up, you know, he would just stay up all night if you let him. He just never slept. And I used to bring him downstairs and like nurse him to Sense and Sensibility, which was awesome because I got to watch Alan Rickman like every single night. You know, it was awesome.
Man,
but it was because it was so slow paced. But it's a beautiful story. And you know, you can only tell the story you want to tell in the way you want to tell it. And there are going to be readers out there that love that.
Well, that's me. I mean, I want a big, enormous book. I want to find it and not know what it is, and then think it was just mine.
And sink
that's
into
what
it.
I hope this book is.
Put the blanket on and get a big pot of tea and read it. I mean, I totally lost myself in that book. So just don't worry about it. You're not, the people that want a fast-paced book, that's not going to be their book.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There are books for everybody. It's okay, you know.
Right. Yeah. Before we wrap up, those were our questions. So, but before we wrap up, I always love to ask authors to tell us where readers can connect with them online. So if you guys want to let us know the best way to reach you.
Kimberly?
I am on my author Facebook page and Instagram more than Twitter these days. The only reason I go on Twitter is to talk to Susanna Kearsley.
Who is always on Twitter. Susanna Kearsley is always on Twitter. Do not tell Susanna Kearsley's editors, because editors, she is always writing.
Right. I have a website. We've got Goodreads and BookBub and all of the things, you know. And then they've got a ton of events lately, right? I keep forgetting to mention those. So
because your book
my tour dates.
You're touring. But all your tour dates are on your website, right?
Yeah.
So which is your favorite? What's your favorite social media? What do you love doing
Right
best?
now, I like Instagram. I like to see the pictures. I feel like it's kind, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just a visual person, so I like all of the imagery, and that's what I'm liking right now.
I feel intimidated by Instagram because everything's so perfect. Yeah, it's so like, I'm not. If I were to angle.
Oh, I'm not. I take pictures of my house that's falling apart and put those on there. I don't worry about that.
If I were to angle this camera down and let you see my floor, I would get.
No, I know.
I would get mail. But no, I Twitter is good for me because I can get on and off really quickly. Like I can get on, check it, poof, off, and.
See, I'm the opposite. I get on there and I'm on there forever.
Oh, really? Yeah. No, I have, and I think I've curated my Twitter feed really well. I've got really positive people and really neat people.
That's good.
I used to be like I studied politics at university when I was like politics and international development stuff. So I follow some really cool journalists from all corners of the world, and I get
I do go there to get news.
Yeah, and I just, it's my water cooler, right? I can get on and talk to my writing friends from wherever, from Britain, when I'm finishing my writing sessions at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and my writing friends in Britain are just kind of waking up, and it's like, hello. So when they're waking up, it's like, oh gosh, gotta go to bed, But it's like my water cooler, I guess is the best way to say it, because I can chat with people. Facebook is where most of my readers are.
I know.
And I'm very bad about going on.
I'm the same way.
Because I know there's a whole bunch of people over there on Facebook going,
yeah,
come talk to us. And I try to get over there as much as I can, but I'm very bad about doing it. And I have actually, I snaked my profile on TikTok.
Did you really?
I did, because I have a lot of younger readers, and I have this Gen X love for Gen Z, says the Canadian, not Gen Z.
Yeah.
But I really, really feel this bond with like the Gen Z people. I just love them to death. They're going to save the planet. I just couldn't get enough of them. And
you're right.
And I totally want to, I have the best readers from that generation. I just love them to death, and I really want to find a way to be where they are. And I'm so intimidated by because I haven't got any videos up yet on TikTok, and it's like, okay, I'm such a perfectionist. It's like the very first one has to be absolutely perfect. So I haven't got anything up yet, but I'm traveling in 2 weeks. No, next week.
Well, that will give you.
So I'll do something when I'm traveling.
Yeah.
I don't take enough showers as a writer to do videos all the time. That's my problem. I'm like, no, you can't see me today.
Yeah, sorry. I know it's well, traveling's going to be fun because I'm going to be
that would work. Yeah.
Masked to the hilt and keeping people away from me with a cattle prod most of the time.
And a hat. I'm always in a hat.
Go away. So that's where we are. That's our long answer to your really short question.
No worries. I loved it. But yeah, I think that is it. I put just in the chat a few minutes ago links to the books again, some of our social media, and where to connect with Andersons as well. So I just want to say thank you to you both.
Oh, look at the beautiful
yes.
book. Oh, and you can get we have book plates signed. For my book, for The Vanished Days, and for The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare as well. And I do want to say my mom owned and ran an independent bookstore when I was a little girl, and she made no money because my sister and I would get to the boxes of new books first, and somewhere on these shelves is an entire hardcover set of the Anne of Green Gables books that I snagged out of the box. And my mom had to order an entirely new set to put on the shelves at the bookstore. So stuff like that would happen, so she had no profit whatsoever. But it was a fascinating experience to, be going into my mom's bookstore and seeing how bookstores were run, and to learn that nobody does anything with books except for the love of books. And independent bookstores have had a harder time through the pandemic than a lot of other businesses. And independent bookstores are the wind at the back of authors like Kimberly and me. And they are there when we need them.
That's how we know each other from
Yeah.
an independent bookstore.
Exactly. That's how we would never have met if it hadn't been for an independent
And
bookstore.
that's funny. Don't you think that's like my library story though? Because you grew up with those books around you. Did you?
Yep.
Did little Susanna look around and think, this is how I can talk forever?
Now, little Susanna was talking from the time she came out. I was just talking. But it really is. It's independent bookstores are there regardless. They never let you down. They never forget you. They just look after you in a way that other bookstores don't. And I would just like to encourage everybody, even if you already own our books, please try to buy something from Anderson's. They make it really easy. They've got their beautiful websites. Just buy a kid's book, buy a cookbook, buy a calendar, buy something small, note cards, anything, just to kind of have their back for doing events like this, because they've always got ours. It just means a lot to them and to us that you continue to support them. So that's all I really wanted to say.
Thank you, Susanna.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate that. And I know everyone at Anderson's will love to hear that as well. So again, everyone, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully we will see you all again soon. Kimberly, good luck on the rest of your tour.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And like I said, we'll hopefully see all of you again soon. So thank you so much, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. Good night. Have a wonderful week and stay safe.
Thank you so much, Susanna. And thank you, Danielle.
Of course, no problem. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.